Okay, a very good morning to all of you. I hope you are able to hear me and see me. Oh, so you can unmute the chat. Oh, did he leave without? How do I unmute the chat myself? Okay, wait, I'll see. Okay, just wait. I'll call him and ask how to unmute the chat. Okay, I just informed him to open the chat. All right, so that I can take your queries and your answers. Okay, so you all are requested. I've already told you that do not disturb others on the chat box. All right, it does not look good and it only initiates such a processes as of stopping this thing altogether. I don't want that. It should be interactive, right? The session should be interactive. So let's wait. So I'm requesting you to not spam it with any kind of unwanted messages. So now you can do what? Meanwhile, we are waiting for Mohit sir to unmute the chat. You can do one thing. You can make a list of what all questions you need to ask today. All right. And I'll answer it. Any problem from the last class, you can ask me. Okay. Other than that, we will be finishing with the poetry part today. All right. And then we will be starting with Shadow Lines introduction. That is for sure. Okay. So let me see.
Yes, ma'am, enable कर दिया.
Okay, okay. So now it is enabled, so you can ask me questions, any problems from the last class, anything that you wish to ask. Alright, so I hope you will be mature about it and not spam it. Alright, do not do that. Do not write messages which are offensive to anyone. Okay, do not chat personally. Good morning, Nikita. Okay, so I hope you all have the study material for the same. Yes, I have to see this. Okay, good morning, all of you. Okay, good morning, everyone. A very good morning to all of you. I hope you all are doing fine. Okay. Okay, Khushbu, you are saying, who is this? Alina, you are saying, ma'am, can you write down from which book we have to study? See, as for the book, there are master texts. For example, when we talk about what? When we talk about Also share, who is this? Okay, share the Telegram group link so that I can reshare it over here. So see, when you're talking about which book to refer to, for example, I have a different version of Shadowlines. All right, it's a Penguin edition. But you have, some people have critical edition, some people have other publications, so that does not matter. What matters is you read the master text. Apart from that, for supplementary material, you can read the Souls study material. All right, one of you share the Telegram link as well, and then we will talk about it. All right, so let's, without more ado, let me tell you about what we are going to do today. I have shared, or everyone has shared, enough study material on the group. So let me just check it out once, whether you have the files or not. Okay, so you have this file, right? The poems and drama one. So see, for Shadowlines, we are going to the we are for Shadowlines, we are going to refer explicitly to the study material. Why? Because we cannot go with the master text. You have a different text, I have a different text, and it is not possible for us to go chapter wise. Apart from that, I'll be sharing some essays on the Telegram group as well. So just share the link over here so that I can reshare it. Many people are asking for the same. Okay, so now we will do one thing. We are left with Meena Kandusamy touch. Okay, that is there. But or shall we start? There is one poetry which is left, or shall we wait? I'll see. I'm reassuring it again. What is it? Okay, that's good, Nidhi. Okay, meter, you are asking puja. It is the kind of what? It is the kind of paraphernalia that we use for poetry. For example, the idea of what rhyming scheme, what meter. So all these are very technical terms. You can look into it. Not very important. As in, okay, so Dipanshi is saying, please write your full name on your profile before you request to join it. Okay, so do that. Okay, I'm just sharing the link again. No, no, don't write your full name over here. Dipanshu is saying, I think what he means is that when you join the Telegram group, just make sure you have the full name on. Okay, I've shared the link again. You can refer to this. Explore but did not test the call, and Ritika is asking poet biography important from exam point of view. See, from exam point of view, obviously when you get a question, you will not have enough time and space to write the introduction of the writer as well. That is not possible. Okay, so what you can do is you have to read it. Why? Because when Okay, so you have to read it. Why? Because for your own understanding. For example, when we know something about Kamala Das's background, that she had a problematic marriage, she was not loved by her parents, she always felt a kind of inferiority complex. It gives us a hint as to how to analyze the poetry that we are reading. Alright, so we have some background information, and that helps us in what? In analyzing the poetry better. But as in the examination, you can obviously introduce some of the elements, but it is not very hard and fast rule that you have to write something about the biography. Okay. Okay, Pooja, great, you understood. Um, okay, just wait. I'm reading all the queries and then I will answer. There are many, so just wait. Give me a minute. All right, so I've read all the queries. So let me answer just 1 second. I was not able to share my screen. So I'll be referring to my phone for the poetries that you're asking me about. So majorly people have asked me about enterprise. People have asked me about questions from my grandmother's house. And then you have asked about the papers. That is going to be offline. Nothing important. Then there were people who are asking how and when are we going to do the soul study material question. And then there were questions regarding. Okay, there have been answers by Khushi and Sandhya also. Okay, so see, Enterprise by Nissim Azinkiel that we did. You have asked me about a summary. Somebody has asked me about a summary. So the poetry is about what? The poetry is about the poet starting off in a pilgrimage with a bunch of his compatriots or companions and finding the reality of life, finding the truth of life, exploring the truth of to Ella. When Ella chose her freedom of choice, oh, did I, this is, it is, I think, 20. Okay, over here. Okay, I must have started the recording later on. Okay, no problem. So what I was saying, it is metaphoric of a human's journey through life and the idea of initially starting with a lot many peoples, but then the idea of differences of thought process that lead to the dissension or disintegration of the group. That is one thing that we talked about. And there have been questions about my grandmother's house imagery and I think Kajal was there, Kushi was there, who was answering that. I think the idea of going to other people for changes can also refer to extramarital affair. Yes, that can be one of the interpretation that you're forming. Then somebody was asking me about. Okay, Sandhya also added to the interpretation. She said, "Ma'am, by reading the biography, we are able to link the poetry with life of a poet and contextualize it. It aids us in understanding the content more effectively because the life instances are reflected in the poetry." Very good. Yes. So Khushi has also. So today we are going to start with. Okay, is it clear? So today we are going to start with Shadow Lines by Amitav Ghosh. Just take out all the study material. I'll be sharing the same with you. Just let me try to share the study material to you. Okay, I'll just tell you. 1 second. I'll just share the material with you. Wait. Okay, meanwhile, everything is clear. I hope that is clear to you. See, the examinations are going to be offline. You do not have to worry about them as yet. You have to do your study. All right. Don't worry whether be it online or offline. So there is one poetry that we will do later on. Now today we are going to start with shadow lines. Okay. Just one. Give me a second. Those who have recently joined the group, can any one of you just share the study material again so that they can also access this one, shadow lines one that I'm going to show, so that if it is not visible on the screen clearly, they can simply refer to it from their own text. Okay, just why am I not? I don't know why I'm not able to share it. Okay, now I think it's visible. Is it visible now? I don't know what was the trouble. Let me see if it's visible. Okay, so as for poetry, people are asking, there is only one poetry, Meena Kandaswamy touch that we are left with, but I want to start with. Okay, yes. Because I want to start with shadow lines. Why? Because if I give you an introduction for the same, you can read the master text on your own, and I can see that somebody has shared, Sridev has shared a complete PDF of the book. So please look at it, download it. You have to read the text. I'm starting with Shadowlines today so that you have an idea what the novel is about and you start reading it because it's the longest text that we have. All right. Okay. Okay. So it's visible to you. Yes. So let's begin. I don't know what was happening. I was not able to share it. I'll mark the important passages for you. You can mark it also in your study material. Okay, let's read on. Okay, so The Shadow Lines by Amitav Ghosh was written. The Shadow Lines by Amitav Ghosh was written in 1988. The inclusion of this novel in the English Honours syllabus of the University of Delhi is meant to introduce you to Indian writing in English. You will come across two terms used to describe this literature: Indo-Anglian writing or simply Indian English writing. You are free to use either. I hope you realize that the corpus of Indian English writing is substantial and is growing apace. That is growing very rapidly. This includes a large number of novels, a lot of poetry, and also some plays. Much of this writing is considerable value. Some well-known names, all of these novelists are Raja Rao, Mulk Anand, R.K. Narayan, Nayantara Sehgal, Anita Desai, and Shashi Deshpande, and Raja Rao's Kantapura. Shashi Deshpande, and latterly Salman Rushdie. And there are many, many others. Mulk Anand's Untouchable and Raja Rao's Kantapura are well known, and I hope you have read it in the last, or at least heard of it. Or if you have not read it, you will be reading it. I need hardly remind you that the film guide made by Devanand was based on the novel of the same name by R.K. Narayan, and the serial Malgudi Day shows on the Doordarshan was also based on a short stories of some author. So this is the basic history of Indian writing in English. That is Indian were writing in English language, essentially first language, writing in English. It's not a translation we are talking about, they're essentially writing in English. Now let us come to the introduction of Shadow Lines. You have to read the complete summarizing, all right? Introducing the Shadow Lines. Here is a novel that you will enjoy reading as I did. I talked to several readers of the novel and all agreed that it was interesting. Or in the language of today, it was an interesting read. The reason to my mind is that novel is full of stories, stories told by different characters, stories that suggest or lead to other stories, and stories within stories within stories, stories within stories with, okay, this is a misprinting, making the novel a sort of a feast of a net worthy of stories, and all we like stories. Every story has a, okay, there are a lot of misprinting over here. Every story has a point. It says something at the end. What do the stories in the novel say? What is the point? Is it when you reach this stage that reading the novel becomes a serious exercise? At one level, The Shattered Lines is the story of Trideep, who was the uncle of narrator and his mentor from the time he, the narrator, was 8 and Trideep 29. His love for an English girl, May is the name of the girl, and his death in the communal riots in Dhaka in 1964. The narrative, however, does not come to a close in 1964 but continues till 1979 when the narrator comes back to India after years staying in England on the research grant. It was only in 1979 to 15 it was only in 1979, 15 years after the Dhaka riots, that he became mature enough to understand the connection between Dhaka riots in 1964 and the Calcutta riots that followed soon after, and also true meaning of Trideep's death. The novel does not only tells the story of Trideep but also the story of growth and maturity of the narrator himself. It is, to use a German word, a Bildungsroman, a growing up novel. So what is building romance? I will tell you just one second. The Child Lines also raises issues of freedom and nationalism and borders and will compel you to rethink some. Where did it go? Just a second. Compel you to rethink some of your ideas of these issues. So the idea of buildings roman is, for example, genre is also considered a building romance. Building romance is when you see the growth of the character from innocence to maturity, from childhood to being an adult. So the idea of the journey that a person makes, the idea of the struggles that he goes through, and which ultimately lead to what? Which ultimately lead to the understanding or better understanding of the character of the way of the words. All right, so this is what we call Bildungsroman, when you see the character growing in every true sense. All right, so the story, you understand, the story is essentially about the narrator who sees Trideep, this 29 years old boy or guy, as his mentor. All right, when you read the novel, you will see that how he mirrors his image, as if there is an alter ego that he's resonating with, as if he becomes the alter ego of Trideep. He's so influenced by this man that when he imagines Trideep as a boy, for the stories that they have discussed, he always imagines Trideep as if he looked exactly like him. So he's one of the rich relatives that the narrator has. So there is also this grandmother. It's a very, very interesting story. You should read it on your own. The basic summary is just to giving you an idea of what it is about Dhaka rights, about India Bangladesh concept, conflict concept. All these things will be of use to you. Who, don't spam the chat box. I've already told you. Okay? Understood? The basic idea what the stories are going to be about, the idea of Trideep's death and how he dies for me, or at protecting her, because she's the one who throws herself at the rioters and tries to save a man, but Trideep had to take a step to save me. All right, so now this is what we are going to do. Understood? I hope this is clear to you. So start reading the novel. Now we will start discussing it. Okay, so are you able to understand the gist of it? This is what it is going to be about. It is going to be about the idea of migration, about the idea of displacement, about war between two countries, about weaning away from identity. That how, due to partition, due to such transmigration, there have been lot of people who have lost their home, lost their identity, and lost the purpose to live in their life. All right, and how do they try to cling on to these values, to cling on to some material good of what was, their of their earlier life, the vestiges of their earlier life, to hold on to that, to think that okay, now I belong, to always have this identity crisis as to where do I belong, who is it that I truly belong to, who is it that I truly call my own. All right, so these are the issues of identity, these are the issue of transmigration, these are the issue of migration, these are the issues of forced displacement of people, of warring countries, of how there are people who suffer from the moment they are displaced from their homes to the moment that they still are craving to go back to that place and to call it their own. All right. So the idea of identity crisis, the idea of not being able to know which boundary starts and whether it's imaginary or not. For example, a very great scene is there whereby the grandmother does not understand that the lines on the map are not actually drawn. It is something which is only for the maps. So she says, but is there an essential wall that I'll see when we cross the place? So this is very amazing when you see that there are people who do not even understand what it entails, the very idea of displacement, and the idea of how there are people in the oligarchy, you understand, some people who control everything, the idea of hegemony, the idea of oligarchy. So these are the people who are enjoying, who are at the top of the pyramid. For example, if there is a pyramid, then there are people who are at the top, then there are the people who are below them, and then the bottommost. So the idea of having what an oligarchy, oligarch, or oligarchy, and the idea of hegemony, hegemonizing the system. These are the people who have hegemonized the system, and they are the one who are running the puppet show. It is as if everyone is a puppet. All right, there are countries who are at war, there are people who are at war, but nobody understands the plight of the struggle of a common man, of how he or she suffers, of how difficult it is for you to establish something for over the years, all right, to collect things, to build a house, and then to have to leave it within a night. So that is the struggle that we are talking about. That is the idea of identity crisis that we will be seeing, the idea of act of bravery. of a person who is being considered good for nothing. For example, Trideep was always considered someone who was good for nothing, a happy-to-go-lucky person who is not serious about anything. He does not share a great relationship with his father. He has some brothers who are well established. One brother is in the Indian Foreign Services. His own father is in the Indian Administrative Services. But he has wasted his life, according to people, he has wasted his life altogether. But then he really falls in love with this girl, May, who is an English woman, and the idea of not just falling in love but giving his life for a purpose that the writer over the years understands. So you will see that the format of the novel is such that there are different timelines. So the novel switches from one timeline to another. So it is not in a chronology. That is, you will not say that okay, he was born, now this happened, he went to college. No, the linear equation is not there, linear narrative is not there. There is a narrative which switches over to time and places. Calcutta, England, Delhi, Calcutta, England, like this. Okay, understood? Yes, Pooja, good. Okay, yes, son. Yes, in the administrative services. Okay, let's begin then. Now, this is important. Why? Because now you will understand the background, partition. Let's talk about this. Just Okay, let's also read something about Amitabh Ghosh. You will get an idea of what it is about, from where is the writer writing. So, Amitabh Ghosh was born in Calcutta in 1956 and spent this childhood there and also in Dhaka and Colombo. He studied at the St. Stephen's College, Delhi, and went to take a DPhil in social anthropology at Oxford. He has taught at the Delhi Schools of Economics, Delhi University, and has also been a visiting professor at Columbia University and Virginia University in America. His anthropological interests took him to Alexandria University and to the villages of Egypt. These interests are reflected in some of his work, most of it in an antique land, the Calcutta chromosome, in Dancing in Cambodia at large in Burma. And Dancing in Cambodia at large in Burma, 1998. Okay. So, do you understand the reason of Amitabh Ghosh writing or being able to write so close knittedly with the ideas of transmigration, with the idea of enforced migration? Because he writes also from this experience of displacement. Okay. Harpreet No Thudeep is Alia's cousin, Ila's cousin. Yes, not Ila, but May. Okay, just give me a minute. Okay, so is there anyone who would want to read? I also have an option of unmuting. So is there anyone who would want to read, who can read properly, who has a stable connection, who will be able to read in a clear voice? Or maybe it will be problematic, if, okay, let's drop the idea, because then it will create a lot of disturbance if somebody does not have a proper connection. So let's do one thing. I'll read it on. So partition, important event. There have been two cataclysmic events in Indian history: the mutiny in 1857, the first independence struggle that is, and the partition of the country in 1947. Freedom for India came with partition of the country in 1947, and partition came because the All India Muslim League, led by M.A. Jinnah, wanted a homeland for Muslims on the basis of what they call the two nation theory. The two nation theory meant that there was not one nation in India, a position held by the Indian National Congress, but that there were two nations, Hindus and Muslims. This led to the creation of Pakistan, carved out of Muslim majority provinces of Sindh, NWFP, and Baluchistan, and Muslim majority areas of Punjab and Bengal. Punjab became West Bengal and East Punjab. Punjab became West Punjab and East Punjab, and Bengal became East Bengal and West Bengal, with West Punjab and East Bengal going over to Pakistan. In 1971, the India Pakistan wing broke away from Pakistan and emerged as Bangladesh under the leadership of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. This further division called in question the two nation theory on the basis of which Pakistan had been formed. Apparently, apart from other things, ethnicity and culture proved a far stronger force than religion. Partition meant shedding off. Oh, wait a second. Okay, now let's start again. So, in 1971, the East Pakistan wing broke away from this. We did. Apparently, apart from other things, ethnicity and culture proved a far stronger force than religion. Partition meant shedding of a great deal of blood and destruction of all kinds on both sides of the border. In Punjab, it also meant uprooting and transfer of population from West Punjab to East Punjab and vice versa. The situation in Bengal was The situation in Bengal was, however, different. Here, the migration took place in trickles, and it occurred either because of the communal violence or discrimination or insecurity, or because of preference for living in a secular state. According to historian Leonard A. Gordon, there were about 1 million Hindus in Bangladesh in 1978, and the number has been declining. So, the idea of the situation in Bengal was, however, different. Or the idea of East Pakistan, I hope you are familiar with the conflict that happened. 1978 in India Bangladesh war was also there. I hope you know something about it. So the ideas of nation and nationalism and nation state. So you know the background now. The idea of partition and then the idea of communal violence that happened in Calcutta on the basis of ethnicity. So apart from religion, that was also one of the major bone of contention, that is between Hindus and Muslims. There was also a loss and problematics of what ethnicities that came in conflict regarding various groups. So the ideas of nation and nationalism and nation state, this is also one of the important theme that we have. Let me just read it out. Is it clear what we have already discussed? Are you able to understand? Both. Shridev, you should do both. Okay, Chef Fali, you are asking anthropological. So anthropology is related to the study of human nature, all right, humans. Okay, okay. So we will continue having these discussions. Don't worry. These are the pointers that are going to be repeated throughout the novel. So let's start. Let's continue per se. So, what is nation? The idea of nation, nationalism, and nation state, the word nation comes from a root that means be born. According to Oxford Encyclopedia English Dictionary, a nation is a community of people of mainly common descent, history, language, etc., forming a state or inhabiting a territory. This definition is helpful to some extent, but we need to be more precise and we need to identify the elements that go into making of a nation. So Ernest Renan, a French scholar, wrote an essay, What is Nation, in 1882, which is still helpful in clarifying our ideas about what constitutes a nation. Very important, read it clearly with me, read it ardently with me, and read it again on your own as well. Let's discuss this. So, Renan begins by recounting the elements that are not essential to nation making. According to him, race, language, and religion are not essential to a nation. Race, originally crucial, is becoming increasingly less important. Also, language, though it invites people to unite, does not force them to do so. And likewise, religion, he says, cannot supply an adequate basis for the constitution of a modern nation either. What about community of interest? A community of interest, in his view, does not suffice to make a nation. Nationality has a sentimental side to it, it is both soul and body. Similarly, the writer dismisses the claim of geography to nation making. The soil furnishes the substructure, the field of struggle and of labor. Man furnishes the soul. Man is everything in the formation of the sacred thing which is called people. A nation is spiritual principle. It is a spiritual family, not a group determined by the shape of the earth. So the idea what? The idea of nation. All right, essential to nation building. What are the elements essential to nation building? What constitutes a nation? This is the first statement that is made. We will discuss it. Wait, now let us talk about the next. According to Renan, two things are necessary to constitute the spiritual principle: the past and present. One is the possession in common of a rich legacy of memories, the other in present day consent, the desire to live together. A nation, he says, must have a common fund of memories of triumph or glory or of endeavors or of sacrifices. So what are we talking about? We are talking about collective psyche. That is the idea of collective psyche. When you have common memories, for example, we as humans have common memories, we as Indians have common memories of what our nation has been, what our nation went through, what are the things that are there in our nation. So the idea of collective psyche, PSYCHE, collective psyche that we have. All right. To have common glories in the past and to have a common will in the present, to have performed great deeds together, to wish to perform still more. These are the essential conditions for being a people. Even more valuable than triumphs are memories of having suffered together, for shared suffering, he says, unify one more than joy does, and because they impose duties and require a common effort. So he's saying that the idea of having to have suffered together. So again, the ideas of, okay, now let me explain it to you. Just wait. So what Renan is again and again pointing towards is the fact that the nation, that there has been a misconception about nation requiring common religious beliefs, requiring common way of being, common way of communication, that is a language. He says no, these are not necessary. These are not the prerequisites for a nation building. When you talk about the idea of nation building, only one thing is important, and only one principle becomes important, or one or two principles become important. That is that of having a common history, a collective psyche of what all you went through and what all you wish to go through together. And he says that if you have a collective memory of the glories that your country went through, the deeds, great deeds that it did, all right, then you can form a nation. It does not require for you to have the similar spiritual faith, religious faith, or the kind or the idea of what having common belief system. No, that is not necessary. The only idea which is necessary is to believe in the abstraction of the nation, that is the pool of common memories that you can harp on, that you can draw from. All right, and in those memories, all right, you take pride in those memories and go forward from there. So that is the only thing which is important. This is what he's talking about. Clear? You will understand it slowly and gradually, do not worry. Okay. As for the classes, okay, have you got any? No, not as of now. Did you get any timetable for the next month, for June? Have you got any timetable for the June session? Any subject list, any timetable like you got for May? Have you? Can you share it on the group? Is there any subject list that you have already got for the next month? Share it here and also on the Telegram group. Okay, some people are saying yes, some people are saying no. Okay, let me check. No, no, June. You have no classes for English main core subject in June, is it? Or have you got the timetable for the same? Yes, you have JAE, CC, and GE classes. So yes, so this is going to be online only. Yeah, so that is the yes, yes. That's what I'm asking. So yeah, so all do prepare for examination offline. All right. Okay. Other than this, I think this is going to be online only. So just concentrate. Try to make the best of it. Okay. What has happened has happened. You have to make best of it. The examinations, be it online or offline. I think what is important is for you to gain knowledge. Is it just for the examination that you're studying? If the answer is yes, then it's a sad story. Why? Because exams you're going to pass any which way, online, offline, does not matter. But you really have to justify the course that you have done. You really have to justify your being a student. You have to justify your having taken admission. All right, so do that. Just for 2 3 hours, take out the time and help yourself. This is only self help and nothing else. You're not studying for anyone else. You're studying for your own self, and that you have to understand. It is going to be of great use to you in future. You will be a part of the workforce soon, some of you, and some many of you will go for higher studies. So you have to keep in mind that nobody will ask you whether the examination was online, offline, were you COVID batch or not, what was it, classes online, offline. Nobody will matter. Consider it. When the interviewer sit in front of you, when the paper come in front of you, it will ask you every question possible. They will not give you a respite just because you were an online batch or whatever the reasons you have. No, don't make excuses. Make the best of it. Read it your own self. Your hard work will never go in vain. Nothing can beat self hard work. All right. When you do self study, when you do hard work on your own, nothing can beat that. All right. That is the most important thing. So try to gain as much knowledge as possible. Okay. Okay. I'll tell you how to write an answer later on. Yes. Yes. Understood. Understood. Okay, I'll give you some answering tip how to answer. Don't worry, I'll tell you. Dipanshu, I don't think this is possible for me to do. I think it is done by the organizer. Yes, Nikita, yes, that should be the approach. When you do that, you will see that you will perform 110%, you will perform well in the examination. So do not just study for writing those answers. I've shared the link again. Study to excel. All right, study so that you can, for example, somebody asks you, you can also teach them the novel. You can also tell them the novel without any hesitation. Okay. All right, just give me a minute, we will start. Just give me a minute. See, as for the question answers, you have to do it on your own. If there's anything that you find problematic, you can ask me. I think, Nikhil, as of now, that is yes, yes, that is what it looks like. That for main subject, the classes have not been scheduled as yet. Let's see what happens. See, soul material is supplementary material, but you have to read the master text for sure. So read the book and then use it as a helping material. Okay. Okay, just let me set the. Okay, let's talk about this. Then the idea of nation is clear. Then towards the end of the essay, Renan says that human will on which a nation depends changes. So the nation are not something eternal. They had their beginning and they will end. A European confederation will very probably replace them European nation. For the moment, however, the existence of nations is a very good thing, for it is the guarantee of liberty, which would be lost if the world has only one law and only one master. To sum up, according to Renan, race, language, religion, material interest, and geography are not essential to create a nation. On the other hand, a nation shares memories of a common past, of triumphs, of glory and endeavor and sacrifices, that even more so memories of common sufferings and griefs. Finally, a nation must desire to live and work together. So the idea of commonwealth, the idea of common desirability to make it work, that is the most essential principle of a nation building process. That is the most important thing when you are trying to build a nation, when you are trying to live together, when you actually want to live together and make it work no matter what. This is what we are essentially talking about. Clear? Then you can also mark these passages. I'm just doing the most important passages for you that you can directly quote in the examinations also. This is the introduction. Let's talk about. So now you understand the idea of nation. Now we have to come to the idea of nationalism. So the related term nationalism is also needs some attention. Nationalism can simply be defined as patriotic feelings or principles, love and pride in a country showed by its people, desire of people to form an independent country. A spirit of nationalism is essential if a country has to achieve independence or to remain united, but it can easily run to access and assume a form that permits no compromises. Chauvinism is one such form and means a very great and often blind admiration of one's country. This blind admiration goes with the belief that one's country is politically, morally, and militarily better than all others. An extreme form of nationalism is jingoism, which means patriotism that has a military tendency in it. What separates jingoism from patriotism that it owes its allegiance to soil and territory, but not to people living on it. So, what are we talking about? We are talking about the idea of patriotism. We are talking about the idea of how. See, that we are talking about the idea of nationalism. That is the principle of someone being a national. It is the kind of love they feel for their country. But when does it become extreme? When does it is it called chauvinism? Chauvis that we just said chauvinism. It becomes chauvinism when you think that only my country is good, every other country is bad, only my country is the best, every other country is worst. Only I will respect my country flag, not other countries' flag. So that becomes chauvinistic. That is what it is called when it is called chauvinism, when it is called xenophobic, being xenophobic. That is, you say only my language is the most supreme, only my community is the most supreme, not no other community is good enough. All right. So that kind of chauvinism, that kind of what Wait. The idea of chauvinism, the idea of extremism comes from this term. Then the idea of what? The idea of nation we have read, the idea of nationalism. All right, and then the idea of how it is different from jingoism. Jingoism is when you're violently being nationalistic. That is, you say that okay, I will commit violence against people who are not going on with a particular process that I have decided. So that is different from patriotism. Now tell me. Okay, Nikhil, you are asking me what is nation in your simple words. See, nation, Nikhil, I think is the ideal and the idea and the approach of a group of people who share similar views in a way of the nation. That is similar history of suffering, similar history of quest, similar history of going on and doing great deeds and doing something for the nation. Those people, when they come together and when they want to make it work, when they want to commingle, when they want to coexist, even despite the differences that they have, it is called nation. That is when nation is made. It is an abstract idea which is made by people who are ready to come together as a force and wish to do great deeds ahead together as well. Clear? Okay, Divya, that might be. Yes, Mimansa, very good. Linguistic chauvinism, many people have been plagued with or have been accused of linguistic chauvinism, which is when you think that my language is only good enough. I will only speak in my language. Okay, clear. Let's go on. Nation state. Another related term is nation state, which means a nation living together as one politically independent. So now, why are we doing this? Because when you write answers in the examination for shadow lines, you will write all these as well. When you write about the idea of nation state in from the perspective of 3D, when you write about the idea of nation state from the perspective of the narrator or thamma or the grandmother of the family, you will also discuss these pointers. When you talk about transmigration, when you talk about displacement, when you talk about partition, you will also include these ideas of what nation state and nationalism means and what are the extremes. You can always introduce these facts, so you have to read it very carefully. All right, so be attentive when we are doing this. So the idea of, and also it is very good for your own understanding. Another related term is nation state, which means a nation living together as one politically independent state. India, for instance, is a nation state. In Europe, nation states began to develop in the 13th century. Now their boundaries are fixed and settled, and they're moving towards the idea of confederation with common currency called euro. As Professor A.N. Call has pointed out in his brilliant essay, A Reading of the Shattered Lines, a number of modern Western scholars have viewed nationalism negatively. One of them, Ernest Gellner, says nationalism is not the awakening of nations to self-consciousness. It invents nations that they do not, which where they do not exist. This negative view of nationalism arose around the time of Second World War in the face of the rise of imperial nationalism in Germany, Italy, and Japan. Moving beyond nation and owing your loyalty to the idea of a universal brotherhood or cosmopolitan answer is a laudable ideal. But the question that we have to ask is what do we Indians do? We who are still in the process of nation building, we still need to unify and consolidate and work together as a nation before we can think of abolishing national borders and move into the paradise of internationalism. So, healthy, unaggressive nationalism is our priority. Do you agree? Think of these ideas yourself and discuss them with your friends, particularly in context of what Amitabh Ghosh says in the novel. So, what is it? So, what do you think the writer is talking about? Just discuss it with me. Tell me what are your views. So, see, what are these exercises? For example, I've already told you that when you want to improve your speaking skills, English speaking skills, when you want to improve your writing skills, what you do, read some essays regarding a topic, stand in front of the mirror and talk to yourself about the topic. Just go for half an hour. Talk about, okay, this is my perspective, this is what I think, this is what is it. You will see that you are gaining a lot of articulation through this process. Don't write unnecessary messages. Don't do that. Don't do that. Somebody wrote a question about enterprise. Can you just write it again? I just missed it because there's so many, so I scroll down. I'm saying, what do you understand by what we just discussed? What is it what is it that you get from the last passage that we read? The idea of nation state? No, Roshni, see, these terms are not mentioned in the book, but you have to apply it on your own. For example, in the text, it is not written that we're okay. You are saying Vinita enterprise point did not concept of the syllabus. Okay, okay. Just do one thing when we do poetry section once again, then you can come back. No, no. As of now, no idea, no information to that when it will be conducted. Poetry, see, all the queries that you have regarding poetry now, you have to tell me when we are doing Meena's poem. All right, do not do that before it. It will only create a lot of confusion. Ask me questions about this novel. Sadaf, you're saying through this perspective, the author is going to tell us about the nation, that how the conflicts arise through the ideas of chauvinism and idealism. Okay, good. Vibhuta, you're saying, according to me, the narrative wants to say that loving your country is good, but we should not deem any other country. Okay, maybe you missed. You were, I think, you meant to write any other country, demeaning any other country as such. Okay, good. So yes, the ideas are these. For example, when we say that okay, I can apply Marxist feminist perspective, the novel will not explicitly say that you have to apply the women issue over here, feminist perspective, Marxist perspective, class conflict, rich, poor, differentiation. No, you will have to do it on your own. All right, these will not be mentioned explicitly onto the top of the novel. No, you will have to think about it yourself. Now I will tell you from where to start. So these are some of the essential questions that you have to ask yourself. For example, in introduction, who tells the story? Who is the narrator? From whose perspective of the view of the story is told? To whom is the story told? Who speaks when? So why is it important? Because the narratorial voices changes umpteen number of time. A lot of story within a stories are there. A story which the narrator is telling us, then he's telling about the story that Trideep told him. Okay, so there is a narrative. So he's narrating a narrative that was told to him by Trideep. Trideep is the one who is telling him a story. Then author is the one who is now telling the story to us. So story within a story, narrative within a narrative. So, but first let us get the bare facts of the story state. The story revolves around two families, one Indian, the other English. At the core of the Indian family are two sisters, Maya Devi and her elder sister who remains unnamed and who is the narrator's grandmother. The sister originally belonged to Dhaka, where they lived in a joint family presided over by their father and his elder brother, Jait Moshai. The elder of the two sisters got married to a railway engineer in Burma 4 years before Maya Devi. Her husband died in 1935, making it necessary for his widow to start working as a school teacher. Her son, the narrator's father, was a junior engineer in a rubber company. She was a stern woman who had worked hard to educate her son and who did not want her grandson to waste time. For this reason, she did not want him to keep her sister's son, Trideep's company, who she thought was a waster. She was a firm nationalist and recalled how, as a college girl, she had been surprised to discover that a quiet classmate of hers was a revolutionary. He had been given the task of killing an English magistrate, and the police were looking for him. Given the opportunity, she would have killed him. It was for our freedom. I would have done anything to be free. Later, she donated her gold chain given to her by her husband for the war fund during the India Pakistan War of 1965. Maya Devi was married to Mr. Himalaygu Shekhar Datta Chaudhary, who was in the Indian Foreign Service. They had three sons, Jatin, who became a UN economist, Trideep, 2 years younger than Jatin, and Robbie, much younger, who later on joined the IAS. Very basic story. I'm reading it fast. You can also read it on your own. Maya Devi's father-in-law, Justice Chandrasekhara Datta Chaudhary, had been a judge of the Calcutta High Court. His interest in spiritualism has brought him in contact with an Englishman called Leonin Tresosin, who did business in Calcutta. He had a son, Elan, and a daughter, Elizabeth, who married a man who had taught her in the college, S.N.I. Price. Mrs. Elizabeth Price had two children, Nick and May. When in 1939 Mrs. Price heard that her father's friend's son, Mr. Himagalu Shekhar Datta Chaudhary, was ill and was planning to visit England, she wrote them to come and stay with her. According to Maya Devi, her husband and her son Trideep went to England during the war and stayed with Mrs. Price for a year. So the details of the events, now we are coming to the details of the event. The narrator and Jatin's daughter Ila were of the same age and had been childhood playmates, and the narrator fancied her. Since Ela's parents were in foreign services, her visits to Calcutta were few and far between, but the narrators avidly looked forward to her visits and continued to fancy her. She studied in different schools abroad and would show him the albums of photographs of different schools in her friends. In 1960, her father was on a sabbatical leave from his job at the UN and taught in a university in North of England, and she and her mother stayed with the Mrs. Price and family of London. So, what is the writer essentially establishing? He's saying that there is one family, there are two families that we are essentially talking about. Two sisters that you understand, Maya Devi and the grandmother of the narrator is not named. So, the ideas is that of how they lived together in Dhaka, but they had to displace due to the partition, and they used to live in a joint family, and now they have their respective families, and now the relation is being discussed that there is also an English family that they're related to, three sons of the other grandmother that we're talking about. So these are very basic facts. All right, I hope you understand them. I hope you read it on your own. Only that way you will be able to understand what you will be able to understand the story. Okay, there are few more answers that I should read out. Thamma in the book has Kevin is writing. Thamma in the book has a strong sense of patriotism and finds it hard to love or even consider other countries or places to be equal to her own country. Yes, that is the ma'am. I agree with the author. One should be loyal to. Yes, that is true, Roshni. Everyone should be loyal to their country. We should respect the ideals of the country. This is the place which is giving us all that we need. It means that nation is feeling it's sort of doing something together. Yes, Nikita, you're saying we should equally respect all the countries because each country has struggled to reach where they are now. Yes, the poet wants to convey that we shouldn't follow the ideals of chauvinism. Tanu, you are saying then the author is bringing to surface the reality of formation of these nations and what all may go behind the formation of the same. Mahima. Yes, Mahima, right. Good. The way you are saying these ideas and perspectives are present in the novel as subtext, it's upon us to understand and find them. Very good. So the ideals and these trajectories that we are using, for example, if we are going to study about the partition context, if we are going to study about the Marxist context, if we are going to discuss women issue, if we are going to discuss the idea of identity crisis, these are upon us. It is not as if the writer is saying that, the idea of nation building is this and that, and this is how my commentary about this. We have to find those hints and narratives from the book itself and try to answer the question ourselves. Very good, Sandhya. Okay, good, Pooja. Don't spam the group with these links. Yes, I've already shared the relevant link. Do not spam it. Why did Mayadevi and her sister? Okay, emotionally also they have a rift. We will be talking about it, but otherwise they got married to different people, obviously, and they had to be displaced. Yes. Someone is sharing. Okay, someone has shared some notes. Okay, they are saying, okay, yeah, you can share it on the Telegram as well. Kushi was saying Narrator's grandmother was a hypocrite for saying ho to Ella when Ella chose her freedom of choice, but later she also said that she could kill anyone if it's for freedom. Yes, good, good that you have read it. Very good, ma'am. What is the meaning of jingoism, Tani? When you are violent against people or violent onto people who you think do not agree with your idea of nation state. Kushi was saying narrator imagines how London looked for the stories of Sudeep and look how imagination is important because seeing the physical view, but Ella did not understand it. She was always roaming. Yes. So the idea of the narrative not being able to visit these places, but the very stories that Pradeep told him about, the very narratives, very many narratives that he introduced him about, ignited what? The desire to go to these places, to excel in his studies so that he can be there one day. Okay, let's read a little bit more. We have to do one more. Okay, let's read this one also. So, during Durga Puja holidays, Ella came to Calcutta and took the narrator to the old family house in Rai Bazaar and played a game called Houses with him just as she played the game with Nick in London. In London, she attended school along with Mrs. Price's son Nick. Apparently, this brought her closer to Nick. Later, she studied at the University College in London doing BA History. Ella had become fashionable and free in her manners. During one of her visits to Calcutta, she persuaded the narrator and her uncle Robbie to go to Grand Hotel and shocked her uncle by offering to dance with complete strangers there. When the incensed Robbie knocked the men down, Ella greatly resented his interference, saying, I'll do what I bloody well want, when I want, and where. And later she openly declared that she lived in London because I want to be free. When the narrator told his disciplinary grandmother Ela's reason for staying in London, she called her a whore, saying that she wanted to be left alone to do what she pleased. So the idea is that of what? Okay, let's discuss. Just read a little bit more. The narrator's hope in Ella were disappointed when after a Christmas party, they both the narrator and Ella had to stay together overnight in the cellar in Mrs. Price's house, and Ella told him that she had always thought of him as a brother. Ella ended up marrying Nick. May was tiny baby 1939 to 40 when Pradeep had stayed in Mrs. Price along with his parents. In 1959, he started regular correspondence with May. His fourth letter to her described an erotic meeting between a man and a woman, complete strangers who made love to each other in a ruined cinema house during the war. Pradeep wrote that he too wanted to meet her as a stranger in a ruin, and if that was to happen, she would have to come to India. They would find a place like that somewhere. He was an expert on ruins. So the idea is that of what Kushi also talked about, the idea of the grandmother calling her a whore for performing or for living her life on her own terms. So the idea of feminist perspective that we get, the idea of women perspective that we get, that whatever you do is justified, even the violence that you say is justified. But when the ideals of freedom and the idea of independence are exercised by people who can exercise it because of their position, because of the hard work they have put in, or because of their power position in the society, you call them whores, you call them good for nothing. So whatever you cannot understand, you always deride it as good for nothing. So this is what the writer is essentially pointing towards. Clear? Is it clear? Any questions? Okay, Nikhil, that is a different plane of discussion that we are going to have because they were far-fetched cousins and they could not have minded it, we could say. Sandhya, you're saying, Mama, Thama is an ardent patriot, which is visible when she says that she wanted to help a revolutionary boy during her. Yes, yes, right. You are saying feminist perspective, I'll repeat. Okay, so the feminist perspective here is when you, for example, the idea of Thamma, the idea of the grandmother going against Ella for for dressing in a certain way, for drinking alcohol, or for doing everything in her own terms, living life on her own terms to her free will. The very ideals of these, that is the hypocrisy of her saying that she's a whore. To clearly call someone a slut or a whore on the basis of the kind of clothes they wear, on the kind of lifestyle they share. No, that is not anyone's right. Nobody can do that to you. Nobody should do that to you. You, as educated intelligentsia, we as intelligentsia, are expected to accept it. All right, we are expected to not dismiss someone or judge someone on the basis of how do they dress up. For example, especially for women, that has been a great norm, which is not the right way of being. Those who are judging the character of a person by the way they dress up, or by calling them out on how they look, or how they are leading their lives, it is they who need to be judged on to. All right, so just because you could not do certain things in your time, the times have been changing, you have to accept the change with over the time. All right, you have to understand, you have to respect the idea of someone's spatial existence, where they are living, what are the principles they stand by, what are kind of upbringing they had. You cannot expect them to follow a certain set of rules that you have been following and that you think will define a greatness of someone's character. Yes. So now you also understand that how Trideep's and May's affair started. So that is one thing. Okay, later she came to now May's visit the to Calcutta. So later she came to Calcutta on a visit and stayed with the narrator's family. When she went out with Rideep, the narrator accompanied them. One morning they all went to see the Queen Victoria Memorial. It was during this visit that May acknowledged her love for Rideep. This is our ruin. That's what we have been looking for. He said, yes, she said, this will do for our ruin. Italics in the original. On the other occasion, they went to see the Diamond Harbour. On the other, May spied on an injured dog lying in the middle of the road. She asked Sudeep to stop the car, went back to where the dog lay, and in spite of Sudeep's objection, and put an end to the dog's suffering by mercy killing it. At this, Sudeep asked her to promise him to do the same service for him if he should ever need it. On 2nd January 1964, May accompanied Sudeep and the narrator's grandmother and Robbie to Dhaka. So this is very important, very momentous event whereby Sudeep will lose his life. So very important. We will start with this in the next one. Now, any problems that you have, anything that you could not understand, you ask me. Let's discuss about the same. This is what we are going to continue with, because here Tudi will lose his life finally, and you will see how he sacrificed himself for a set of principles. So the question that I will ask you, the question that I'm asking you right now, why do you think Pradeep went so rashly after the rioters, and why he sacrificed his life? What can be the possible reason for the same? Is it just the love for May? Or you don't have to answer now. Just think about it later on in the next class or the next one, whenever you have the right one. Okay, any problem? Is it understood? Everything is understood? Asli, you're asking because she has her own prejudices regarding someone dressing in a certain way, and therefore they are called what? Cause. Okay, all of you got it. reason for the same. Is it just the love for me? Or you don't have to answer now. Just think about it later on in the next class or the next one, whenever you have the right one. Okay, any problem? Is it understood? Everything is understood? Asli, you're asking because she has her own prejudices regarding someone dressing in a certain way, and therefore they are called what cause? Okay, all of you got it, understood? Okay then. All of you have a good day. We will continue with the class next Saturday. All right, so do read the novel. All right, do read the novel. That is very, very important to you. My question to you is, when Pradeep dies, my question to you is, why do you think he dies for me? Is it why he dies, why he sacrifices his life? Is it just for me that he does? Is it just for a riot that is happening for the man who is being tried to being killed by other people? What is it? Or it is a combination of many more things. Okay, all of you have a good day. All of you. Take care, all right? So we will see you. Okay, so we will do what? We will have our class next Saturday. Okay, all of you? Just read the novel, come with your query, come prepared in the class.
Okay, I found this on the web for please read the novel.
All of you have a good day. All right, let's call it a day. I'll see you all on the next Saturday. Take care, all of you. Okay, so.